Welcome to Keep It Healthy podcast. Today, we're happy to feature Kathrin Folkendt, a distinguished figure in the Femtech industry. With a rich background in tech at Intel and Hewlett Packard and significant roles in startups across the globe, Kathrin's personal journey with PCOS pivoted her focus towards women's health. As a founder and CEO of Femtech Insider, Kathrin leads the premier platform for women's health innovation and actively contributes to Perla Health, focusing on PCOS care. Her expertise makes her a sought-after speaker and consultant on femtech, women's health, and innovation. Through Femtech Insider, Kathrin offers invaluable resources for the femtech community, including news, trends, and insights, fostering the growth and impact of women's health technologies. Kathrin's work is driven by her passion for bridging the gap between technology and healthcare, particularly in addressing under-researched women's health issues like PCOS. Join us as we explore Kathrin Folkendt's visionary contributions to improving women's health through technology. Welcome to Keep IT Healthy podcast, the show hosted by people making things happen in technology, aiming to optimize healthcare delivery, health, well-being, and fitness. My name is Jan Kamiński and I'm the co-founder of AppLover, a company dedicated to improving the quality of life with IT solutions and digital advisory. We started making this podcast to amplify great thinking to propel healthcare forward.
I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Femtech Insider, and we are the globally leading media outlet for all things women's health innovation and femtech. But that was not always my job. So it took me quite a while to get to where I am today. I actually got diagnosed with a condition called polycystic ovary syndrome. First of all, when I was diagnosed, I had never heard of it. And so it kind of hit me out of nowhere. And that was quite a surprise for me because I had always thought of myself as someone that, I take care of my health, I eat well, I work out, and, sort of eating well and working out and dieting, that was women's health to me, right? And obviously knowing what I know now, I could not have been more wrong. There's a lot more to it. But with PCOS, I had a pretty terrible diagnostic experience. I had a pretty terrible early care experience that, just was not very empathetic. And also partially I was misinformed, unfortunately. And, I literally, after the diagnosis, I spent a year feeling sorry for myself. And until I was like, okay, I'm actually going to figure this out and figure out how I'm going to live with that. So maybe for those of you that are not so familiar with polycystic ovary syndrome, it's essentially at its core a hormonal imbalance. So that means I and 1 in 10 women that actually have PCOS, so it's rather common, live with excess androgen levels. And so that causes a bunch of different symptoms. And what's also interesting about polycystic ovary syndrome, not every woman experiences the same symptoms. So some of the most common ones are obesity, fertility issues, irregular periods, bad skin, as in acne, hormonal acne, hair loss, hair growth in places where you don't want the hair. So male pattern hair growth is what it's referred to. And then, you're also at a higher risk for various other conditions like cardiac diseases, various female cancers, diabetes, and also on the mental health side, simply because, there's a lot of things that impact your body image. There's a higher chance of women with PCOS actually experiencing anxiety, social anxiety, or depression. And so again, I spent a year just feeling like, okay, well, this is my life now, feeling sorry for myself until I kind of, was like, okay, I'm actually going to figure this out. And I started to learn. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that this poor diagnostic experience, this poor early care experience that I had gone through was actually not me being the exception. I was actually the rule, and there were structural problems in the women's health space. I learned about endometriosis and then menopause and, kind of female cancers and all the other stuff. And having all this background in the tech space, I kind of was like, well, what technology is actually out there making a difference in that space. And so I stumbled upon the term femtech quite early on. And I just, I was still working for this fintech company, and I had this list of femtech companies. And, I really had this list for no reason whatsoever. And I was just kind of curious. It was personal curiosity, really. And then I think it was in 2018 when for the first time a report came out. I believe it was Frost & Sullivan that kind of spoke or analyzed the femtech space. And they were speaking about a $50 billion opportunity by 25. So I saw that report, and I also saw that for the first time VCs and the media
Hmm.
were writing about the space. And, I was there with my little list, and I was like, well, this is exciting. There's a little bit of conversation about this thing I've been following, but where can I
Yeah.
go now and learn more? And so I was quite disappointed coming from the fintech space, where there's all these blogs and media outlets that are covering innovation in the financial industry, basically, and nobody was really speaking about women's health sort of with this innovation angle. So yeah, I was like, well, if nobody else does it, then I guess I'll just do it. So we started, or Femtech
Right.
Insider started as a newsletter, and has grown into the platform we are today since. So very, very humble beginnings, and I
Hmm.
sometimes say it's a side project that took over my life. But
Right.
yeah,
That's probably every business, but I mean that's an
yeah,
inspiring story. I mean, you spent some time in corporate as in corporation, and then you
yeah.
moved to a startup, and then you actually moved to a scale up, which is like you would combine a startup and a corporation, right? In a sense. So, what were the differences in culture in those companies where you felt the best, in a sense, or better than the other places?
So I think what I really like, what I really learned in corporate environments was structure. And sort of, really kind of understanding. I think like I'm the kind of person, what I really enjoy and what I'm good at is connecting the dots. And I think, this kind of skill set is helpful in all these environments in different ways. So I was always quite good at interdisciplinary work, and in terms of sort of bringing people together, rallying people around a common cause. And I think this sort of in corporate environments, that was mostly around like I think like sometimes it's referred to as like intrapreneurship. I think like that's kind of how I saw my role, specifically at HP and towards the end of my time there. And then sort of when you move into a startup environment where you're just really resource constrained, to a certain extent. You're just trying to figure out, how to make the most out of the little marketing budget you have. So, the skill set that I'd kind of learned in corporate roles with regards to how to really build structure. And that was really handy in terms of building my marketing organization at that startup eventually, but also in terms of helping, sort of how do I kind of interact with stakeholders that are out there that can help us amplify the message that we want to put out there. How can I get creative in the use of like new media? So I think this connecting the dots thing has always been there, and specifically at the scale ups, I think it's very, very similar. So I think it's a little bit in between with regards to that. And in the fintech space, I was involved in building up, as I mentioned, an office, sort of one of the first international offices for a Silicon Valley company. And obviously that comes with a lot of different skill sets, and like to a certain extent I feel like I've always been a bit of a generalist that's interested in learning things and trying to figure things out. And so that's these kinds of sort of, I feel like curiosity driven people, can excel at, whatever they do. And I think a lot of these different experiences, seeing companies at these very, very different stages, is definitely benefiting me now as a founder. Although what I will say, what I am learning now being on a founder journey and building my own company, is that I'm quite good, and I can get quite excited about sort of the very, very early stages when you have to be very creative with regards to getting stuff off the ground. And then we are also with Femtech Insider at the moment, I would say, like really we're quite solid when it comes to product market
Hmm.
fit, sort of like yeah, where we're like figuring out how to scale now, how to put in place processes, and hire, build proper organizations, and this kind of stuff. So I think I enjoy the early stage stuff more, but every stage of organization comes with its own challenges.
What were the key milestones and challenges in establishing Femtech Insider as a platform in women's health innovation? I know right now you mentioned you're focusing on scale, on processes, but I want to talk about the early days.
Very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, very honestly, I feel like in the beginning, it was a side project to me, right? So, like in the beginning, it felt like play. I was enjoying this, and every like one subscriber more was exciting to me, and was like sort of almost felt to me like a milestone worth celebrating. I was lucky that, I did not know what I was getting myself into in the beginning to a certain extent. But like, I think, for any media organization and specifically the femtech space, I think as a publication, we've really grown with the space and also with the interest in the space. I'm hoping we've also contributed to building interest in the space. But I think, when we started out almost 4.5 years ago now, there was not really a femtech community in a sense that we could tap into for an audience.
Right.
So we've really been quite instrumental also in terms of, bringing people with a shared interest in something together around a newsletter. So really finding that early audience and sort of, that was interested in these topics, I think was definitely a challenge. It was, who do we speak to? Who's even, in this space? And, I had like a database of companies and, just reach out to people, be like, hey, will you come on for an interview, or will you do an interview with us? And then, these people shared that they were working with us, or like, that we covered them. And so, that's bit by bit, like it was a very, very slow process in the beginning, and really kind of what our audience wants, what the challenges are, what these people actually want to read about, where they are, what they care about. I think those were some of the big challenges, really. Going back to kind of, the tech terminology, really figuring out what the product actually was, and what we should be putting out there.
How did you manage the community? You mentioned you were scaling it, approaching people, but then you started building it. So how did you manage it eventually?
To be honest, I think, we took this like very standard startup advice that some of us will hear sometimes. It's like, do things that don't scale in the beginning. I remember in the beginning, I would talk to as many people as I just possibly could on a one-on-one basis. And I also remember these days when I was excited when somebody would actually email me, like right now, kind of with a very scary inbox. I kind of miss these days, but people that would email us very early on and just like, want to talk about what they're working on, or what they're doing or what we're doing. And I was always so excited to just learn from this audience. It was really very much one-on-one and trying to just manually connect people. Since we really started, I think LinkedIn, to be honest, I think has also seen a bit of a renaissance. I would say 4.5 years ago, LinkedIn was not as just dynamic as a platform as it is today. I think there's like more activity now, and also sort of the tools and like sub communities I think are more active. And what we have also, like, I still believe in sort of this power of introductions, and so we don't have a community in the classic sense or like a community product. What we have is an introduction product. So that means people can sign up for it. And then, they are connected to someone else with similar interests every month, every 2 weeks, every week, depending on how often they want that service. And yeah, they can just chat with someone else that's maybe, in fundraising at the moment, or that's a VC in the space, or that's looking to break into femtech. So we have kind of, different categories. And I always believe in, the classic communities sometimes, I feel connect people to other people's content, but not necessarily other people. So yeah, we run this platform called Intros by Femtech Insider that is doing a lot of the sort of community work in terms of connecting our readers and turning them actually into a community that knows each other for us.
You write a lot about trends and leadership and leaders in the femtech space. What trends or tech or technologies do you believe will significantly impact women's health in the, let's say, next few years?
I think what I'm going to say is not going to come as a big surprise to anybody listening to this. I think AI is definitely going to be, sort of changing the game, not just in healthcare, but in, pretty much any industry that we're in, even for us in media. Like, we're watching it obviously with a lot of interest, but specifically on the healthcare side and also in femtech, I think we really have an opportunity. And I see AI like kind of to really change things in 3 ways. So first of all, really for healthcare providers in terms of, the companion sort of products or like apps or whatever you want to call it, that are just, really helping healthcare providers be more efficient. And, just also, I've seen a few interesting things around, sort of companions for prescriptions and things like that, in terms of which drugs interact with which other drugs. So I think there's something to be said for safety. I do not believe that, AI will ever replace doctors in the way that, some people are just kind of, parroting it out there.
Right.
But I think we're definitely going to see improvements on efficiency, and also in terms of, freeing up the human time in order to really focus on the patient. I think there's AI is going to have a role in just generally drug discovery. I think that's quite exciting in the biotech space. And then specifically, and I think that is quite important in the context of women's health and femtech, sort of the personalized treatment pathways, in a sense that, we can really learn from these data sets, and, kind of really figure out what are the best treatments for any given woman at any given time. So really, this new age of precision medicine and, figuring out what are the right and best treatments. I think, this is going to be a huge step for the women's health space.
Mhm.
That being said, though, I think we have one big issue in the women's health space, and that is a lack of data. So, we really need to make sure that we also have the data sets to really train these algorithms on, to make sure they actually work in a way. But yeah, overall, to answer your question, I think AI is definitely going to be a game changer.
And what about you mentioned the VC interest, but from that perspective, from investment perspective in femtech, I'm sure you're covering a lot of stars like that, and you see the demand on that end. Are there any, let's say, verticals where in femtech that VCs are really interested in right now?
So I think generally where we're seeing things pick up across the board, I think that's would be a generally valid statement. Things are still not great. I think when you compare investments in femtech to investments in overall healthcare innovation, we're still in the 1-digit percent number somewhere, unfortunately. So I think please, more investment. We definitely need it. But that being said, we can definitely also see trends. I think we're still seeing more investment into classic reproductive health. So meaning anything from menstruation to, anything to do with either trying to not have a baby, contraception, or trying to have a baby, as in fertility, pregnancy support, postpartum is getting a lot of attention at the moment. And then we're also sort of seeing quite a bit of activity at the end of a woman's reproductive life, sort of, menopause care, postmenopause care, helping manage the menopausal transition. I think that's kind of where we're seeing a lot of the investment dollars going at the moment. Specifically fertility, I think one reason being that, IVF, assisted reproductive technologies overall, we're really seeing a lot of money going into these spaces right now. And the reason for that is I think we actually have treatments that work. So, IVF is something that works if you want to make a baby, or works for many people that, are not able to conceive in traditional ways. And so, the issues that we're really solving for in the fertility space is often access related. So people not being able to afford it, or, we're seeing also, again, AI in the fertility clinic in terms of, making sure that we pick the right embryo that has the biggest chance of actually turning into a baby. And so, we're seeing efficiency in the fertility clinic, better outcomes in the fertility clinic, solutions to just improve access to fertility treatments, so that the science is there. We just sometimes people don't have access to it. So that's an easier problem to solve for, I feel. That gives VCs more confidence than having to come with some moonshot, completely new treatment. As in my case with polycystic ovary syndrome, we don't know what causes polycystic ovary syndrome. We don't have a cure for it. So, it's we really need to start from the very, very beginning with a lot of women's health conditions. And that starts with very basic science and research. And, that's sometimes too early and too risky for VCs that in the end also, need to provide returns for their LPs. So I think that's the reason why we're seeing more investment in those well understood spaces along the reproductive cycle.
As you see that, what are the biggest obstacles then in general, or maybe that you faced in promoting femtech innovation and in promoting femtech investments and companies?
I think that the biggest challenge that we as a space have is that we're wrongfully still considered a niche. I think, where there's always this notion of, oh, yeah, femtech, women's health, that's so niche. I don't understand it. I mean, we still see lots of people at venture funds that actually write checks are men, right? And so it's it takes a little bit of research and a little bit of empathy to really understand these issues that often to, women are just inherently logical in terms of, yeah, of course that's an issue. And, I think it really the awareness aspect is an issue. So I think that's like really where it starts, where we're also hoping with Femtech Insider to make a difference in a sense that if we're not talking about these topics, if you're not hearing about these topics, then I'm a founder pitching a startup to a VC that's telling me, well, if this is really such a big problem, then I would have heard of it, no? To a certain extent, I also empathize with that. But that's why, we're really facing still a lot of stigmatization around women's bodies and women's health. And I mean, even for me, prior to sort of running, I think 1 year into running Femtech Insider, I was not comfortable to speak about my PCOS diagnosis because, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be the PCOS girl forever. What if what if a guy that wants to date me Googles me and then he finds out and what happens then? And I mean, like I have a partner, so, fortunately it all worked out well. But it was kind of, there's all these like strange fears that you have and this strange shame. And I think, we just need to move beyond that and have more open conversations about these things. Awareness and just open conversations about these topics holds us back because we don't really grasp the scope of how big and impactful this actually is. And then I think the second thing that we struggle with is, women's health is a big financial, opportunity. So, this is not just, in my mind, making a difference in women's lives and in women's health outcomes is reason enough to, do something about, better women's health. But I also understand, from a venture perspective, there needs to be a financial incentive. So I think it's just like also financially a very, very big opportunity. And we've just, I think McKinsey just came out with a report a few weeks ago that was like, well, if we properly invest in women's health, it could mean an additional $40 trillion for the economy, right? So like those are pretty big, serious numbers. I mean, we're also seeing that like there's a few venture funds that are dedicated to only investing in women's health or women's and reproductive health. And, they are seeing good returns. They're pretty stable also now during the economic downturn, as we sometimes like to call it, and where many startups are, really struggling. But yeah, I think there's this notion that, we're corporate social responsibility and, this is just nice. But like, I think it's an impactful space that can drive great financial returns. And I think this is really also the narrative that we're trying to put out there with Femtech Insider. And I think this is really what also, kind of is eventually going to drive more investment to the space, because in the end, it's numbers that speak. And that's really what we're here for and what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the voices get louder and louder thanks to platforms like yours as well. When I was doing the research, you have the inner circle community that offers some unique benefits to its members. And what are those? Could you elaborate on that?
Right. So the Inner Circle is our premium membership, and so it's quite popular actually among VCs. The way I like to describe it, I mentioned earlier that like one of the core things that we do with Femtech Insider is our newsletter that goes out once a week, and it's kind of like a little bit like a Femtech brief, I would say. So that goes out every Thursday, and then on Monday we send out a premium subscriber newsletter. And I always like to say the difference is so the Thursday newsletter tells you this is what happened, and then the Monday newsletter is kind of like, and this is why it matters. So it's a little bit more analytical. We dive a little bit deeper into topics. So first of all, you get like an additional newsletter that's a little bit more analytical. But then we also organize bi-weekly webinars that are deep dives into various topics. So just recently, we did like a deep dive into the menopause ecosystem. We did hormonal health. We did psychedelics in the context of women's health. We've talked about like the intersection of beauty and women's health, contraception, reproductive health, you name it. So we're really trying to be an educational partner for the investor community and anybody else that's really interested in getting a deeper understanding of the space to just educate themselves. So it's really the webinars, access to those, access to all the recordings of all the webinars we've ever done, and then just the premium content.
Okay, so it's like a knowledge that you share, a premium knowledge that you share behind let's say, a particular paywall. When it comes to the features or ideas or developments in Femtech Insider, I know evolved, the platform evolved a lot since the
Yeah.
inception. So what future developments can the audience expect?
We relaunched our job board to be, just a better resource. So, we're really seeing a lot of interest of women that are interested into working in this space and just like, bringing their talents to the women's health innovation ecosystem, which is great to see. So we obviously, want to support that. And the second thing that I'm quite excited about, it's our Femtech bot. So, you can also look, it's on our website, but it's also at femtechbot.com. And it's free. And it's basically, so we took all our content that we've written over the past 4 years and trained an AI on it. So it's, I would say, the best resource out there. If you have any like Femtech questions, you can just ask Femtech Bot. So the way I like to position it, it's really a research assistant that's trained on all our content. Yeah, that's something that we recently launched and we're quite excited about. I'm particularly excited about it because it also works in any language. So not just English, which I just returned from a trip to Japan, actually. So, there was a lot of interest in also trying it there by like, sort of the local ecosystem. And, just like it helps people to access all of this content that we've written over the past 4 years in a, much more comprehensive way. And like what we're really exploring at the moment is to, kind of double down a little bit more on our event offering, seeing what the need there is. Again, we have a pretty broad audience that's very engaged and, really kind of cares about the content that we put out. So I think probably you're going to see some innovation for us in the event space. But yeah, we're still exploring what exactly that will look like, whether that's in person or a different online offer. To be decided, hopefully sometime this year.
That's super interesting. And I mean, you mentioned that as a personal topic, but it's also connected with the content you share and what you speak about. So, what strategy do you employ to bring attention to, like you mentioned, under researched areas like PCOS? And do you use your own platform as well to promote it in a sense?
I've always built Femtech Insider independent of, if I want to call it my personal brand and sort of personal business to a certain extent, because I also think it's very important, for the content and the platform to speak for itself. And to a certain extent, I think, it's important that, my personal opinions or personal views to a certain extent, are not as present on the platform, because obviously we strive to be like kind of, an objective resource for everybody in this space. I will obviously, whenever I speak, I mean, you've heard me now speak about PCOS, I will always bring it up when I speak about sort of the founding story and when it's also more about me as a person and my opinions. And in that sense, I think the platform is not so instrumental in terms of carrying that message out. I mean, do I hope that 2024 we're seeing a little bit more innovation in the PCOS space? For sure. And I also think that there's more conversation around it in general. And obviously, I'm very happy to contribute to that conversation. But I think like the Femtech Insider in itself is not so much, Kathrin's private sort of advocacy tool, if you want to say that. So I think that's really for me. I do a lot of public speaking also in the sense of like, I mean, I did not know anything about women's health when I started. And, I just felt super misinformed. And I mean, it led me to starting this business. So I think my big message is really that, there change is possible for women with PCOS. And, you can move past this. So I think like my hope is that we can have a conversation specifically around PCOS as one to a certain extent of empowerment almost, because like what really bothers me is that a lot of these conversations are so sad, it's like kind of just very, yeah. I don't know. It's just really, it makes me sad to hear, all this, like this resignation and, this belief that, that you're alone and that there's nothing better out there. And I think the big message is, look, there's researchers working on this. There's innovators working on this. There's pharma companies working on this. You're not alone. There's millions of other women who are going through the same thing. So it's really, kind of if me speaking up. And so another thing I forgot to mention about PCOS is that 50% of women are actually undiagnosed. So if me speaking up and being more open about my own PCOS journey and my own experiences. If I can help one woman get diagnosed and, get the care that she needs in order to feel better, then, that's, I can go home happy today. So
Mhm.
that's my big hope, is that we just create awareness, and it really starts with, many of us just, kind of moving past the taboo, moving past the stigma, moving past the shame, owning our stories, and just also being very open that, I have a pretty great life now because I decided to take action, and, I think that, others can too.
I know you're a public speaker, by the way, because when we were doing the research, but that's what was also my question, because I know you do a lot of consultancy advisory work on the side. And how do you combine that? Is it something as an add-on? Is it separate? You share a lot of knowledge. Like you mentioned that, like you want to be active as a speaker, as someone that shares a particular message. So like, how do you divide that time?
The consultancy bit is usually like also kind of driven by the work we do with Femtech Insider. So, we're on the consultancy side, we're usually active in research projects. So, we don't do a lot on the strategic side. So, we will maybe work with insurance groups or pharma companies, or like also corporates in maybe, I don't know, the cosmetics, skincare space, or whatever it may be, that come to us and, kind of ask us to create landscapes for them in terms of what innovation we're seeing, what we're excited about. Again, we've been writing about this stuff for a very long time. So obviously we see a lot, and we also see a lot of startups or new innovation earlier than most other players or even like consultancy firms in the market. So like that's kind of what we also do through Femtech Insider, sort of through the knowledge gained there. I speak a lot about sort of, just this, similar to what we spoke about today, sort of, how everything came together from sort of me just being a patient that was, looking for help, to then in the end creating something that is now, helping to elevate the voices of an entire industry that's trying to support patients. I just really like to tell that story because it's a story of really, anyone can do this. Again, I knew nobody in this space in the beginning. I just started out as somebody that, wanted to make a difference. And I think, we need all hands on deck if we're really going to bring change to women's health. So there's an opportunity for everyone to get involved if they want to. And yeah, so I think that's kind of, I speak a lot about PCOS and obviously, Femtech, my own story on the speaking side.
And where can our audience find you?
The best way to find us, or, also read about the things that I've talked about, is Femtech Insider. Very easy, femtechinsider.com. If you have specific questions about Femtech, you can check out our bot. It's femtechbot.com. And for all, all the Kathrin related stuff, be it consulting or also sort of, public speaking, the book that I'm writing that we talked about, that's my personal webpage. That's kathrinfolkendt.com.
Kathrin, thank you very much for joining today. Stay in touch with us. Subscribe to our podcast, give us a like, comment, or share. If you want to reach out personally, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram.